I still do struggle even today. There are some times where I'm at my current corporate job where I may be asked to do a task and the task actually hits upon where my actual invisible disability is and where I'm not that successful. And I'll sit there and sometimes I go down a rabbit hole like I can't do this.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality. Whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our soul.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity podcast.
In this episode of Boundless Authenticity, we sit down with speaker and author Danielle Brzusek to discuss the realities of living with invisible disabilities, professional life, and the limiting beliefs that often hold us back. With 15 plus years of legal experience and a deep well of lived insight, Danielle shares her signature strategies for reframing obstacles to empower both health and productivity. In this episode, we're going to talk about what it truly means to navigate the world with an unseen disability, how to identify and dismantle limiting beliefs, as well as practical strategies for transforming challenges into opportunities for growth. Let's hop into the chat now. So Danielle, how's it going today?
Today's fantastic. It's a gorgeous sunny day where I'm at.
That's awesome. It was very nice and sunny here today as well. Now, I was very interested in your topic because this is something that you see a lot of, unseen disabilities. And I know that you speak very passionately about these unseen disabilities and that you talk about limiting beliefs. So can you share with me your personal journey and what inspired you to become an advocate for this?
Absolutely. So I have been diagnosed when I was probably about 4 years old with an auditory processing disorder, which basically the easiest way to put it is that your computer monitor is not connected to your keyboard. So I was very lucky that I had that diagnosis earlier. So as I was going through school, I could start developing tools and start being successful by having tools in my toolbox. It really didn't show up till about 6th grade when multiple choice tests were a huge thing and I continually would fail them. I had a tutor coming to my house literally 2 hours a day, 5 days a week to help me study. And just because at the time that I was going to school, there wasn't a lot of programs where they were allowing you to take like oral tests or alternative ways of doing tests. And so I succeeded the most where I had essay tests or oral tests. And so I just kept trying to advocate for myself with the teachers, letting them know what I needed in order to show them that I knew the material. And so I sometimes had some amazing teachers that really would sit down and allow me to show alternative ways that I knew the materials. And then I had some teachers that were very rigid and wouldn't let me do it. And in those classes, I would fail every single time with multiple choice tests. So continuing on into high school, it really started to show because once again, in high school, they did multiple choice tests. I think that was the easiest things for teachers at that time to go ahead and grade. And I just continued advocating for myself. My journey really hasn't been easy the whole time. I know it kind of sounds like it. I have had my ups and downs. I think the thing that got me through all of the down points is that I excelled in soccer. I excelled in tennis. I was like probably one of the top tennis players. I was one of the top goalkeepers at age 12 all the way up to 18. And what that looks like is that I had the least amount of goals scored on me. So that's how good I was at goalkeeping. And it was all the way up to age 18 when I was 12. So I really focused on sports and not the fact that I had this hidden disability. And that I kind of brought over into my education. So I just kind of continued on. I was about to fail from high school. And the turning point for me was when a principal in high school called me out from a classroom, literally said, Danielle Brzusek, come to the principal's office. And I was embarrassed. Because we had a classroom of 35 kids that I was called out of. And as I'm walking down the hallway, I kept thinking to myself, what did I do? I'm like a really good student. I don't get into drugs. I don't smoke. I don't do anything that would cause the principal office to contact me. I didn't do any, violation of the school or anything. So I walked in and my mom was there. And I sat down, and I will never forget this day. This principal turned to my mom and I and literally sat there and said, your daughter will be lucky if she graduates high school. That was a huge roadblock. To me, that was a huge limiting belief. And as soon as I left that office that day, I don't know really what got into me. I don't know if I kind of got into my zone that I would normally do when I was playing soccer and tennis, but I had this fuel in my belly that was just like, no way. I cannot believe she had the audacity just to tell me that. No way. I am going to graduate high school and I am going to go to college. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to do it. And so from that day forward, I just knew that I wanted to share that story. I ended up finding a boarding school back in Boston, Massachusetts, which is called the Landmark School. I ended up going there junior and senior year of my high school. I went from a CDF student to an honor student and an honor roll, all because they were smaller classes and the people knew how to provide me with alternative testing so I could show them that I knew the material. And then I continued on to get my AA degree and college, which again wasn't easy. There was one college that I did go to that I actually got kicked off the tennis team, unfortunately, because they refused to accommodate my testing. They refused to put my items on tape. And I left that school and found another school that was going to provide those services to me. And I ended up succeeding and graduating. And then I didn't stop there. I went and got my paralegal certificate and continued in the legal field. And the number one reason why I want my story out there is to let people know, that principal, I could have gone a totally different direction after leaving that office. And actually, for a moment, I did put doubt in my brain. I did think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it, am I? But then that other drive it kind of hit me like a truck. And it was just like, no way. But I mean, I could have gone a totally different direction and I could have believed her and never be where I'm at today. And I just want to get that story out there and tell people to really believe in yourself and do not give up. If you can't get through school with the mainstream way, advocate for yourself, get to know yourself, get to know what you can do and start to really focus on the things you can do.
That's an incredible message. What are some personal moments throughout your life where you really struggled emotionally with the reality of your situation, but you had to dig really deep to push past it?
I would say almost every day. Honestly, I'm a very positive person. I wake up and I think I can hit the world today and it's going to be a great day. I still do struggle even today. There are some times where I'm at my current corporate job where I may be asked to do a task and the task actually hits upon where my actual invisible disability is and where I'm not that successful. And I'll sit there and sometimes I go down a rabbit hole. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I've never been able to write. I'm not a good writer. I can't do this. I can't believe they're asking me to write a contract. I can't believe they're asking me to write this email from scratch. I can't, I've done that so many times. But on the flip side, what I have done is understand that, in the corporate world, they're asking me to fulfill something and to fulfill a job. So what can I do and what tools can I research that can actually help me to write that letter? AI is phenomenal. It's a great way to get ideas of how you could start something and then implement it on your own. I use Grammarly on a daily basis. That's just another thing that I use because sometimes my wording is not concise. And so it helps me to make it more concise. Sometimes literally I can write like I'm an 8th grader because once again, I have the thoughts in my head. But when I go and try to write something, it is literally like my brain and the pen are on a standoff. Like I just go blank. So the other tools that I've started doing is, getting a recorder and actually physically pretending that I am writing that email by orally putting it into the recorder, dear so-and-so, blah, 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 or whatever the contract is. And then I can hear it back to myself and type it, and then I can edit it from there. So there's been a lot of times. The biggest time probably was when that principal told me that I would not graduate. I remember going home and kind of feeling deflated, but then also excited at the same time. And I remember going home, I had dogs, so they were my emotional support. So it was great.
Do you happen to know the statistics of how many people live with these disabilities?
60% of the people in the United States have some sort of disability, and over 30% of those people have an invisible disability. And an invisible disability can be cancer, it can be depression, could be ADD, ADHD, it could be auditory processing like I have. It could be PTSD, traumatic brain injury. So there's a whole list of them because you physically cannot see these things.
Well, many people may not realize what an unseen or invisible disability really is. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have, and how can we become more understanding and supportive?
A lot of the misconceptions is because you physically cannot see it on a person that they're lying or that they really do not have that invisible disability, which is really unfortunate. I think the number one thing that we can do is have empathy and to go in if somebody sits there and says, I need an accommodation because I have anxiety, start to seek to understand rather than judge. And we're human beings, and that is so difficult. For example, someone may park their car and they have a disability placard on their car, but they come out and they're not using a walker, they're not using a cane, they're not using, crutches, they don't have a brace, they have no limp. We don't know what their disability is. And I have seen it where people have made comments. Why is that person parked there? They don't have a disability. They may not be able to see 100%. They may not be able to see 20/20. Maybe one of their eyes is partially blind. We don't know that from, seeing them. So I think the biggest message I have is just to embrace it and be there and listen to what the person has to say rather than starting out at the beginning judging.
Now, I know that you talk about limiting beliefs a lot. So how do these beliefs develop for the majority of people that you've witnessed?
I would say a lot of limiting beliefs probably start in your childhood without people knowing that they're limiting you. I remember when I was younger that, I had a dream of being a professional tennis player. I really did. That was my biggest thing. And I remember people in my family sitting there and kind of being like, oh yeah, right, whatever, professional tennis player, And even though they may have been joking, those could have been limiting beliefs. And people hear them and they see them. And even though we try to not internalize it, we still internalize that stuff, even at a young age. Back then I was like, well, I'm going to still be a professional tennis player. But over the years, I may have not become one because I always thought that it wasn't something that my family would approve. I don't think it's just your family, though. I think it's just being out in, the world, going in, and maybe somebody was having a conversation with you and you maybe said, I want to be, a creative writer, right? Or I want to be an author. Or maybe something really drastic, like I want to make $1 million at the age of 18, right? And somebody may have had a conversation, and through that conversation, they were kind of discussing, oh yeah, right, $1 million. How can an 18-year-old make $1 million? Well, these days, anybody can make $1 million probably with AI and a lot of the resources that we have and all the opportunities we have for multiple streams of income. So my biggest thing is if you feel like someone's limiting you, be open, listen to what they have to say. But if you have that drive to do what you want to do, no matter what it is, go for it. You have nothing to lose.
Do you think that the limitations begin at the moment of diagnosis as well? And how do you think the whole healthcare industry could benefit from revamping their approach to issuing these diagnoses?
I think that the diagnosis point, depending on what your age is, I think there's two things that could happen. One, that it's kind of a relief to a certain point, because I think these people struggle silently. They go into a room or they go into, a workplace and they don't think like everybody else. Sometimes these people are off the charts in thinking, they can think beyond some of the senior leaders. But then when they go to write something, it may be a second grade writing. So in one way, they may be relieved because they're like, oh my gosh, now I understand it. But in one way, it can trip up our brains where we may limit ourselves because now we're like, have a diagnosis, right? We're ADD or ADHD. But on the other hand, you can embrace it and just be proud that you're a little different. And then knowing that what that diagnosis is can maybe help to build that tools in the toolbox that can help you be successful. So if you're really bright and you can think things beyond the executive leadership team, but you have a difficult time actually putting it on paper, then finding a tool where I did of auditory, just talking into a microphone and having it written on a piece of paper or talking it into a dictaphone and recording it and then hearing it back and then verbatim transcribing it, that may actually bring it up more to senior year rather than 8th grade writing. So I think there's two sides to it. I think the biggest thing is surrounding yourself with community, other like people that probably have an invisible disability, and surrounding yourself with people that accept you for yourself. And really honing in and focusing on that. And the people that rally around you and are so excited that you have some gifts that other people don't.
Along that same line of thinking, what can leaders, employers, and even family members do to create environments where people with unseen disabilities can feel seen, valued, and empowered to thrive?
For employers, I think education, letting your employees know that there is a safe place to come, because sometimes you may go and start a job, and I know that this has happened for me where I've started a job and I haven't disclosed that I have an invisible disability for the sense that I don't want people to look at me differently. But then all of a sudden, maybe my job shifts and it's, now they want me to write contracts rather than do more projects. And that's like a very difficult area for me. Then, of course, I'm going to have to try and disclose it or try and find tools for myself. So if someone comes to you and says that I have an invisible disability, I'm struggling, have empathy. I think the other thing as coworkers, we're in an office, and office can be stressful enough on its own. And then you may have deadlines that maybe got moved and are more aggressive than where they were before, that could stress people out. And if you see someone at their desk kind of like, oh my gosh, maybe go to them and just ask them, I'm going to the coffee room. Do you want to come with me to the break room and see if they want to go? We don't know if they have an invisible disability or if they're just stressed out that day. There could be something else that's bringing them to that point. So just asking them, hey, let's go to the break room, and then helping them kind of, take a break from that moment. I think family members can just empathize and try to come up with different ways of communicating. I know occasionally when I've been around my family, there may be a trigger and I may get angry or upset. And usually I've had a family member just come to me and just been like, hey, let's go for a walk. And then I come back and my mindset changed. Because we don't know where each other's at unless we communicate. And I think just having education, continuing education about what an invisible disability is, understanding each of them, and having tools in the toolbox ready to help people.
This is such an interesting phenomenon because if someone loses a thumb, they tell themselves, okay, I have to do something differently. So I have to use my other hand to use a hammer or open doors or whatever. So there's an immediate solution. But oftentimes when a diagnosis is issued, a person doesn't psychologically make that connection with I function differently or I have different skills versus I'm broken. What do you think about that?
I like that analogy. And I think it's harder for people that have invisible disabilities because they can't physically see. Like for me, you can't physically see that there's a disconnect in my brain, right? All you can do, and some people may not understand, because verbally I'm off the charts. I mean, I probably sound really smart, which is phenomenal. But then I go to write something, or sometimes if I get really overwhelmed, I may, emotionally kind of crash. Then I don't look like that smart individual at the time. But you're right. When somebody physically has a broken ankle or something, they're on crutches and people are willing to open doors for them. But what about the individual that may not really be able to, maybe in the process of going blind, they can still see, they don't have a cane, but they're having a hard time opening the door. Some people may judge and say that person is not smart. They don't know what they're doing, when in reality, they can't find the doorknob. So I think it is more challenging. I think it's a mindset for the people that do have the invisible disabilities, just like that physical one that you used about the thumb. Well, they could use their other hand, or they could find other alternatives. Same exact thing with invisible disabilities. There is so many resources out there today. There's the ADA website that actually gives examples of what you can ask for accommodations, no matter where you're at, and just really honing in and understanding your own invisible disability. So then you can find those, just like the person with the thumb that physically had it, cut off.
Well, I used that example specifically because I do know a person who lost both of his thumbs at a construction job. And the very next day, he was out with his hand bandaged up, both his hands bandaged, and he was trying to work and do everything like normal. And when he was asked, what are you doing? You should be resting. He was like, I just put that from my mind. Don't worry about it. I still have 8 other fingers.
That is amazing. See, he went through it. He didn't even think about the limiting belief that he couldn't go to work tomorrow.
Yeah. In less than 24 hours, he was back on the job. And I wanted to say that, yeah, you are really smart. And I can tell that you're a deep thinker and a very brilliant achiever. So always give yourself credit for that. And have you ever asked yourself the spiritual question, what did I need to learn from this life circumstance?
That is a great question, because I ask that every day. I would say so far where I've come to the conclusion is that I am resilient and I'm a trailblazer and I'm a trendsetter, and that there's more out there for me to do. And I don't know what it is today, but I know that there's a calling out there for me to go and speak to so many different people about my personal story and to inspire people to not hide behind what I would call a mask, right? A lot of people mask themselves. A lot of people may even isolate themselves. They become very isolated. I do know a few people that have ADD or ADHD, and they get emotionally flooded very quickly. They have anxiety that comes up even thinking about exiting the home and going to a place that has a lot of people because maybe they don't feel comfortable communicating. So they end up having that self-doubt, and they end up having the limiting belief that I can't go to that party or I can't go to that restaurant because I don't talk as good as the other people. And those are real life situations. And for me, there are days that I've questioned myself, but I just keep getting back to what do I really excel in? What am I really good at? And then try to focus on those. And then in my corporate jobs, I have tried to purposely make the decisions of not going into jobs where I am writing a lot. I like to go into jobs where I project a lot, I strategize a lot, I talk a lot, I work together with other people a lot, and that it's not just me sitting there writing contracts. And I think finding what you succeed in, a lot of the stuff that I've done over the years, it's been trial and error. I didn't have ChatGTP back in the day to go, okay, this is what I excel in. What job could I locate? I didn't have that, which is an awesome tool. So I had to do trial and error and see what I exceeded at. I failed a lot. I really did. There were days that I would cry and be upset, but the failures made me resilient and made me know that I'm not going to let my invisible disability, one, define me, and two, keep me from doing what I wanted to do, which back in high school was get a college degree. And then after that, it was to get a paralegal certificate. And then now, ever since I crossed that senior year in high school at the Landmark School, my goal has been to go back to my high school and be their speaker in front of those seniors and tell the seniors just what I'm telling you.
Let me know the email address of your former principal. I'll send him this episode.
Okay. I'll let you know the school.
Well, you've clearly built a career that you're happy with and you enjoy speaking about this. But how has your personal challenge with this shaped your leadership style?
I think I have more empathy for people. I also am the type of person that will teach, my peers or other people in different ways. One may be more of a visual learner, so then I may have to write it on paper as I'm explaining it. Another person may be more of an auditory, so then you have to really be specific with the steps that you're doing. And then another person may just be a person that needs extra time. And so you kind of have to break it down into baby steps, because if you go through the entire process for an hour, it may be overwhelming to them. So maybe they can only take it in blocks of 10 minutes. So breaking down 10 minutes and then allowing 10 minutes, etc. And I think the empathy, communication, and being able to understand that I've been on the other side. I have been the person that was judged. I have been that person that was told I would never graduate from high school. And having both sides, I think, has made me very successful as a leader.
And so for someone who feels misunderstood because of an invisible disability, what are your top strategies for building confidence and learning to advocate for themselves wherever they are?
I think the number one is find one thing that you excel in. Some people are phenomenal artists. Me, I just go ahead and I draw, the little stick figure. Some people can do amazing. Focus on what you're successful at and use that as fuel. Then the other ones that you may not exceed as far or, as good in, try to break down those tasks because there are going to be things. There are some people that have a difficult time cleaning their bedroom, right? They may have everything all over their bedroom. And then they have a difficult time picking it up because as soon as they walk into their bedroom, it's like anxiety and overwhelm and, oh my gosh, where do I begin? And so that's a really good example of breaking it down. Okay, pick up all the clothes first. Pick up all the clothes, decide if they go in the dirty laundry or if you need to fold them and put them in your dresser. Then pick up, all the basketballs if you have a ton of them, or pick up anything that's purple or, and just kind of breaking it down to categories. And before you know it, your entire room is all picked up. And so that's really important.
Well, you mentioned earlier asking for accommodations. So how can a person do that without feeling like they're asking for special treatment?
There's a couple times you can ask for accommodations, right? You can ask for it in the workplace. You can also ask for it at school. I think first, before you ask for the accommodation, is understanding specifically what your invisible disability is. For example, I have asked my employer for Grammarly, and I explained to them that my writing is not well because of my invisible disability and explained what my invisible disability was, and then told them what tools I've had to get through school and how that could help me in my corporate world. So I think really honing in and understanding what your invisible disability is, whether that's doing research, whether that's, talking to people that have the same invisible disability, getting yourself into a community where there are other people that have invisible disabilities, or trial or error. I think that's the number one. The number two is find a confidant that you can confide in if it's in the employer, and explain to them in as much detail as you can that you can do your job. You are fabulous at doing your job, but this one aspect, you need these tools in order to really excel at your job, and be proud and just, try to find the confidence. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay. Just keep encouraging you to find a community where you do feel comfortable. So the more you talk to that community, maybe there's more things that they can help build the confidence. And focus on the things you're stellar at. Some people, the corporate job is not for everybody. It's like putting a painter in at the front desk at a corporate place to go ahead and talk to people. They may be good at talking, but they want to use their creative side. They want a blank canvas to sit there and create. And if you don't find a position for them where they're creating things in the corporate world, you'll stifle them. They'll be limited. And it's sad because there's amazing, bright people out here.
And what would you tell someone who is struggling with having to weigh the risks of stigma against the need for support?
I would say that's an internal battle, and put your ego away and live in your heart and know that you're an amazing person, and to find your community, find your people. It may take a while to find your people, but find your people.
What about if someone is struggling with guilt or self-doubt when their energy is low that day or they're overstimulated that day? What strategies would you recommend?
That happens a lot to me too. By the end of the day, my brain's like, what mush? For me, particularly, what I do is I definitely try to get off electronics, because I find that if I am in that blah mode and I feel that I'm almost brain dead in my brain because I've focused for so long on a project and I didn't take those breaks in between, that I need my brain to be quiet. And that I get off electronics. The second thing I'll do is I'll literally just lay on the couch and just kind of put a pillow over my head and just kind of try to relax. I think the other thing is getting outside. Go for a walk. Go for, if you like to be around people and people recharge you, not drain you, go around where people are and try to find some other things. Some people like to paint. because that recharges them after a busy day. And just find the activity that helps you recharge.
So what's the biggest insight that you would give someone on trying to maintain relationships? Because I imagine that it is, let's say your energy or your symptoms or your needs are fluctuating unpredictably. How do you do life with that?
My biggest motto is baby steps. And I would say hone in on one particular thing that you want to communicate with that individual. And some people text, some people call, some people email, even a text just saying hi. Sometimes that reminds a person that they're still there. I think the other thing is getting out there and practicing the communication skills. I know for a lot of people, it can be very difficult to communicate or to go into a room and even spark a conversation, even go have the courage to go into that room of a group of people. They're anxious just driving to where they're going. I think the biggest thing is just breaking it down. One day, you may only just be able to drive to the place. The next day, you may sit in your car for an hour by driving to the place. The next day, you may only sit there 5 minutes. The next day, you may actually get out of the car and start walking into the place and then turn around and decide to leave. But if you have the courage to try and move a little further every single day, whether it's texting a person hi, and then maybe they don't get back to you that day. Okay, that's fine. Try the next day. You never know what's going on with them on the other side. Leave a message. Write a card. It's awesome. People love getting mail. Write a card just saying hi, and then the person would get back to you. But I really do think it's baby steps because communication isn't easy for everybody. We all think it is, but it's not. There's a lot of people that end up not going out their front door because they're afraid. They're afraid of what somebody may think. They're afraid that if they say the wrong thing, someone's going to judge them. And it's almost kind of like if you want to lose weight, and you want to go to the gym, but sometimes people can't even get out the front door to go to the gym. It's like opening your front door and going and getting your mail. That's one step closer to preparing you to go to that room to speak to those people. My thing is baby steps every day. Just do something to get you to that end result.
What's the biggest illusion that a person has to break in order to be peaceful and contented with their life circumstance?
Comparing themselves to other people. That is the biggest thing that each of us do. It is part of our human nature. We all compare ourselves. And I always sit there and challenge people to really stop having the dialogue inside of their head that that person is better than you. I do it a lot. I do it so many times, and I have to catch myself consciously and sit there and say, no, I am a good person. And that person may be a better entrepreneur today, but they've been an entrepreneur for 50 years. I've been an entrepreneur for maybe a year or two. How can I compare myself? But I do. And I think that if you focus on trying to get that internal dialogue of comparing yourself to a minimum and then believe in yourself, that will help you. I think our internal dialogues that we have with ourselves sometimes are illusions. We think that maybe somebody doesn't like us, and then we start spinning down a spiral and thinking, oh, nobody likes us. And then we generalize it. So I think being aware of that internal dialogue and trying to change it. And that's easier said than done. It's taken years for me to do it.
What are some practical ways that people can start challenging the stories they've been telling themselves?
I would say that the biggest thing is if you start to go down the spiral of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not a good enough person, try to contact a friend or try to locate what the opposite of that would be. For example, and this isn't a tool that everybody has to use, but for example, maybe use ChatGTP and put, I have a negative thought. How do I reverse it? That may not be the best one, but talking to people and finding out, how do I take this, oh, I'm not a good person, and flip it into, I am a great person, and then try to believe it. and just keep trying to remind yourself every day consciously, I am a good person. I am a good person. I am a good person. I am value. I bring value to the world. You just may bring it differently. It's been very difficult because there has been times, especially when I've gotten into workplaces, that I didn't feel successful. There were times that I would beat myself up. And over the years, I would literally have to consciously wake up every morning and look myself in the mirror. And I know this is cliche, and say, I am a good person. Today is going to be good. And literally say it over and over and over again. And I don't think that we give ourselves enough to really have empathy with ourselves. I think a lot of us really do live in the ego. We're afraid. We don't want to show people the vulnerability. And I think if you can be vulnerable and remind yourself that you are a wonderful person every day, there'd be a shift. I always say, leave your ego at the door.
If you could go back and give one piece of comforting advice to your younger self, what would you say to her?
I would say just keep going for it. Find that zone, whatever that zone is, and take that zone into every aspect of your life. I remember being on the soccer field. We were in the championship. And once again, I was an incredible goalkeeper. And when I got on that field and I saw that soccer ball, I didn't see anyone else on the field. All I saw was that soccer ball, and I did not want that soccer ball to go behind me and go in that goal. That's all I cared about for the entire 65 minutes or however long we were playing on that field. And I would hone in on it. And I remember that I did it so much that one of the girls came and actually hit their elbow right here on my head. And I had a concussion. And my dad was a physician. And he comes around to the back of the goal and he's like, Danielle, you got to come out. I'm like, no, Dad, don't talk to me. No, I don't need to come out. And even though I was dizzy, I didn't like pass out, but I was definitely dizzy. I was like, no, I got to save this goal. No. And he kept sitting there talking behind the goal. Danielle, we only have a few minutes. So he already was clocking in his head how much time we had before it would really affect me, right? And he's already clocking it. And I'm like, no, Dad. And there was 2 minutes left in this championship. And I was like, that ball is not going by me, because if it does, we lose. And they blew the whistle. And I remember turning to my dad and said, okay, take me to the emergency room right now. Because I was in such that zone. I didn't care what had happened or what was going on in my body. I wasn't going to let that ball go through, and I wasn't going to let anybody else sit in that goal. And then I remember I was throwing up on the way to the ER. And my dad's like, I told you this is a little late. We should have been at the ER a while ago. But that's just an example of being in the zone. And I think if I was going to tell myself, when I was younger, go for your goals, have your zone, and succeed at whatever you want to do, and enjoy life, and try not to have anybody limit your belief in what you can do, even if they think it's the silliest thing in the world.
This has been an inspiring conversation. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Or they can go to www.danielledoeshealth.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Awesome. Well, Danielle Brzusek, thanks for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And hey, you listening, if you enjoyed this content and you want to help Boundless Authenticity and Danielle spread the word, all you have to do is like and share this episode.